The show this weekend, I already know is going to have some weird stuff because it's a lot of the same people that I saw 2 weeks ago in Pittsburgh for the World Oddities Expo. And literally, if I turn my head out of my table, there was a booth where they sold lamps, but they were made of heads.
So I didn't know how to phrase this, but basically, tell me a story about pre-con and post-con, especially with Dragon Con, because I see people mentioning all the time about they're so excited, especially in the week before Dragon Con, they can't even think straight at work and things like that. And then after Dragon Con, they talk about the post-con blues and things like that. So much so that like Scott, who used to be the second with the Digital Media Track, he would take the next week off from work after Dragon Con just to chill and relax and decompress. Yeah. And so
plus most times when you get home from con, you're going to be sick anyways. So
only you, Dennis. Some of us
just
have to take our vitamins and wash our hands.
I got COVID from wasn't it Devo that gave me COVID?
I don't know about
he
that.
He had COVID that year that I got. That was the only year I've ever gotten COVID. He gave it to me, I think.
Interesting, because I rode in and out with Devo and I didn't get it.
I don't think it was Devo.
He sat next to me on the panel. That's all I
think you're kissing wrong people, sir. Is all I'm saying. So I have a early one. Dragon Con's never done that for me. Dragon Con was always a boost to my spirit, and I just always kind of kept going up and up because I was creating media, so it all has the same feel for me there. But when I was really getting my feet underneath me early on, I was hit my 100th episode, and we had these posters made up for the show, little posters that I could travel with, and I went to my first big podcast convention, and feeling like a rock star there. Not that people necessarily recognize me, but as soon as I started talking about, hey, this is a show I do, or just do my thing in front of people like I do normally now at Dragon Con, it was the first time I got to just, hey, this is who I am. And they were loving it. And it's like the world is full of colors, like what dreams may come. You know, you got all the art and then I go back to work, and in my cubicle is one of those posters from my show to remind me, like, man, I hit this milestone, whatever. And it's like Severance. It was gray and cold and miserable, and I was like, I'll never feel like this again. And so I found ways to keep touching on things and participating in events and different things that have that same energy for me. What about you, Dennis?
So for me, it's actually a bit wonky. So Dragon Con used to be my favorite time of year. I would get excited like a week beforehand. And whether or not it'd be peppy, that's another story, because I'm not really a peppy guy, but whatever. But I would be, very excited to see everybody and do all the things. And then usually about Monday is when I would crash, and I would be exhausted for the next 2 days or 3 days in some instances. But now that I do cons as like a side business, I feel like it's kind of taken some of the magic away from Dragon Con, because I see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, sure.
And like, I already do cons. So I'm like, I'm looking at a con, and I'm looking at it like from logistical standpoint, the setup, the breakdown, all that stuff. So I don't get as much out of Dragon Con as I used to, which is kind of a sad byproduct of doing those shows. And I've never even vended really at Dragon Con. Like I've never had a vendor table.
Well, you're not going to start this year.
Nope, not starting this year either, apparently. So it's kind of a weird thing where it used to be my favorite thing ever. And then maybe like 2022, 2023, that's when it started to get a little weird for me and just kind of lost a little bit of its luster. And then normal cons are just whatever. They're just straight business to me these days. The only excitement I get out of cons is when I go to non-Comic Cons, because you never know what weird crap you're going to see. Like the show this weekend, I already know is going to have some weird stuff because it's a lot of the same people that I saw 2 weeks ago in Pittsburgh for the World Oddities Expo. And literally, if I turn my head out of my table, there was a booth where they sold lamps, but they were made of heads. Like just weird stuff, like cool stuff, but weird. Yeah, and like that's every vendor, like almost every vendor selling. I was the only person selling comic books, I could tell you that. Everybody else was selling just kind of weird stuff. and it was neat. It's cool. Bone art, bone necklaces. Somebody selling bondage gear. They were like, "Oh, this is my first convention. I just started. I'm a leather worker," and I was like, "You know what? I'm going to start making these S&M stuff, and it's been doing great." I said, "All right." I said, "Is your booth the one on the end?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I noticed that when I was going to the food court." I was like, "Oh, okay. There's one of those there."
Joe and I saw people getting tattoos for the first time at the last con we were at.
Oh, that's a lot of cons. I get a lot of horror shows.
Yeah, I knew that from some of the stuff
artists.
you had shared, but this is the first time I'd been at a con that they did it.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I had never been at a con that they had people tattooing right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have a show up here. Well, I mean, I have a show that I go to called the Central PA Tattoo and Horror Expo. So I mean, the whole floor is all about tattooing. But like Monster Mania, for instance, they have a big vendor hall and one little like maybe 50 by a couple 100 feet is all tattoo artists behind a curtain. So yeah, no, that's the thing.
Now you said seeing how the sausage is made is kind of took the magic away from you. I'm all about the sausage, man.
Oh, I love to know how things are made. It's just
Joe's
for whatever reason,
I see it on his
Dragon
face.
Con had like a little bit of magic to it, and now it's kind of been.
And so for me, it just made it more.
It's like seeing the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah,
it's just a dude.
Because you're talking about how the cons are just business for you, but that's everything I do is just I can't turn off my producer brain. I always are seeing I can kind of figure out how they did this or that, or so it just makes me more excited to be behind the curtains. Joe, you've been doing cons. We just found out about 10 to 12 years now, give or take. What about your pre and post con? Can you focus and how did it change? I do want to know, how did it change from like the first time or the second time you came? Because the first time you didn't know you were getting into, the second time you did, to now where you help really build what we do.
Yeah, the first time I had I had a very, very minute idea of what I was getting into with Dragon Con. But the second time especially, I had the app downloaded. I was going through the whole schedule, deciding what I wanted to see, and I got overzealous that second year. I waited out in front of a bunch of panels for an hour or two just to see people.
Not make it, or did you make it or not make it?
No, I made it.
Yeah.
And after that first year, I sometimes try to go to some of the bigger panels, but I don't stress about not making it. Like I'll show up 5 minutes into it and just look to see if there's seating. If there's not, I'll walk away. If there is, awesome. And you know, I don't waste time in lines as much anymore. Even like the vendor hall, I would walk up and depending on who was running it, you could be like, "Hey, I'm a volunteer. Can I get on in? Because I got to get back to volunteering soon." And half the time that would work. Nowadays, since I've been volunteering enough, I get a pass, so I can skip the line.
Oh, nice.
Legitimately.
Yeah,
nowadays.
over 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which they only started that a couple of years ago, where that was a perk of being a volunteer for 5 or more years, and so yeah, I definitely feel afterwards, mostly just tired from because we're working the con. We're not just.
Well, what about like
con-goers, but I definitely feel
Southern
tired.
Fried or something where we do our shows? What about that kind of thing? Do you get excited? What's your pre and post con for that kind of show?
So it depends on which con, because like Con Nuga, the energy just wasn't there, and I was like, eh. But Stellar Con or Conjuration, now that we've been going, those are some of my favorite smaller cons that we attend. Stellar Fest is fun for what it is, but it's.
But you're a magic boy.
Well, so. Or sorry, did I said Stellar Fest? I meant Southern Fried. Southern Fried Gaming Expo is nice for what it is. There's a definite emphasis on the gaming, which that's what it's supposed to be. But they put a ton, at least when the vibe that I've gotten, they put a ton of emphasis on that gaming room with all the pinball machines and everything. Yeah. And pinball's okay, but it's never been really my thing. But they have like half of that room dedicated to pinball machines. which is awesome to see. You just don't stay too long or I'll get a headache with all the,
Oh, yeah.
all the
Concrete
noise.
walls. Dennis, concrete
Oh.
walls in a huge warehouse basically situation, and pinball machines with the volume and arcades.
Yep.
Yeah, that's gotta be fun.
Oh yeah, no, you have to be right up next to somebody to hear them talking.
I would imagine, yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean they're doing the best they can with the space they've got.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a fun con to go to. And the panels, while a bit of an afterthought, they've got enough people to fill them pretty well at Southern Fried Gaming Expo. And so the vibe of the con, when you first walk in, you can usually pick up on how the con's going to go within the first 20 minutes. And Southern Fried, it's got a decent vibe. Cottanooga, not so much. And Stellarfest and Conjuration, if anyone's in the Atlanta area and wants to go to a smaller con, it is awesome. The people there are super nice. They're super personable, and it is a great beginner con, in my opinion. Those two, they're run by the same people and they're at the same location. Just one is science fiction focused, and one is fantasy focused. And
I was always told Dennis that if it wasn't such a long commute, like the driver, I wouldn't fly it even, but it wouldn't offset his travel. But if it's a close con to him, he would kill there. He would sell so many books there, I think.
It had similar vibes to Chattacon, although Chattacon had an older audience than Stellarfest and Conjuration.
I've certainly seen all kinds of different conventions, as Charles can say. Seen conventions where there's more vendors than there are attendees.
Yeah. And you can hear all of those stories if you go to patreon.com/hiveheadstudios.
It's a true story.
We've been working on, he asked me, I guess 3 or 4 years ago now, it doesn't feel that long, but it's like, hey, I do updates on my Patreon for the book. You want to come talk to me about it? And I skipped a few, and you rubbed my nose in it, and then I haven't missed since. And it's a fun talk. And we talk the business of putting the book together, the Kickstarters, the conventions. It's a lot of fun stories.
Yeah, we've had 134 episodes come out so far. Wow. It's not always weekly because it just depends on how much time I have. But it's mostly weekly.
It's one of those scenarios where I said something stupid, going, "Oh, this is the dumbest thing ever." He goes, "That's what we're naming the show."
Like and subscribe. Except I've had many people comment and say, "Hey, if you ever do a podcast, you should name it Like and Subscribe." I'm like, well, funny enough.
Yeah, that's why I called the Rock God podcast.